Howdy, welcome back to another video where today I will be covering how the cellular immunity and humoral immunity, how do these two different immunities work? This one is a bit longer because there's a lot more involved, especially with the humoral immunity since it is a more laid back form of protection against the viruses and infected cells and whatnot. Okay? So, starting with cellular immunity, so what this is pretty much cellular immunity is more focused on attacking directly. So this involves the T lymphocytes. So they attack and destroy the disease cells and the infected cells in the system, right? So what happens is when these cells destroy other cells, it allows for the immune system to remember what these antigens were, so that way the body is able to prevent that from happening again. Kind of like the vaccine, like the COVID vaccine, for example, how it's just essentially like a dead version of the vaccine, so our bodies know what it is. So our so our bodies can prepare ourselves for it. So in our reality, there are actually, as of today, there are 15 different kinds of T lymphocytes, but there are mainly four lymphocytes that we actually need to focus on because those are like the main four, like the big four essentially. So it's the cytotoxic T cells, which what this cell does is it just does the attack on the actual cells. The helper T cells are, you're going to see those again because the helper T cells are also involved with humoral immunity. But the helper T cells pretty much help to promote, they support the cytotoxic cells. And as I mentioned before, as I mentioned just now, they also help in the humoral immunity. The regulator T cells, it limits pretty much what it does is it kind of like holds back or limits the other cells. Because the thing is, if you let the cytotoxic cell attack the infected cell for a long period of time, it's going to kill the cell, it's going to eradicate it, but then it's going to keep multiplying, right? And when it multiplies, it could inevitably end up damaging tissue and other parts of the body, which are good, which those aren't infected at all, those are perfectly fine. So that actually will do damage to those other parts. So the regulatory T cells, like in the name, it helps regulate the other cells to prevent it from spreading further. All right. The memory cells, pretty simple. It's in the name. These are the ones that are involved with memory and cell immunity. So what that means is these cells are the ones in charge of making sure that the body remembers the virus that it just destroyed. So that way, if the virus were to enter the body again, your body would defend itself better than it did last time. So that way you wouldn't feel that many symptoms. Okay? So that is pretty much the cellular immunity. It's pretty straightforward. Humoral immunity. Um, so what it does is I completely misspelled viruses. I'm sorry. So viruses. I am so sorry. There you go. Forgive me for that. So the humoral immunity, so what it does is the human immunity takes a different approach when it comes to the actual like the attacking of the cells. This one kind of attacks the areas like around the cells. It doesn't really directly attack it. That's what the cellular immunity is for. So when I was reading through humoral immunity in the book, I pretty much separated it into three parts, which is recognition, attack, and memory. Very similar to cellular immunity, but it goes a little deeper in depth because of the I completely missed what the receptors. So the first step of humoral immunity, which is the recognition. So humoral immunity actually starts with the lymphocytes B rather than lymphocytes T. So everything starts with B cell activation. So when this occurs when an antigen binds to several surface receptors, and when it does that, when it binds to them, it links them together, and then they take them into the cell, right? when the helper T lymphocyte, like the one I mentioned before, that would help with humoral immunity, the helper T lymphocyte is the one that really like activates it truly because it's pretty limited as to what it can do because it is a very weak link. So the helper T lymphocyte actually binds to the complex, and then it secretes this thing called interleukins, right? Which that helps activate the B cell that triggers the clonal selection. The clonal selection is split into two different things. It's split into plasma cells and it's split into memory cells, if I remember correctly. So most of the cells that are created from the cloning are actually plasma cells, and the job of the plasma cells is to synthesize and create antibodies. The antibodies are what are used to help destroy the invading infected cells. Second part of the human immunity is the attack, the fun part. The attack part of the human immunity splits into four parts actually. So it's the second part that splits into four parts. It's neutralization, which it masks the critical regions of an antigen molecule by antibodies. Complement fixation, which this is when the antibodies pretty much bind complement proteins to an enemy cell, which leads to destruction. So it kind of like latches onto the cell and it like kind of like blows itself, not blows itself up, but it attaches itself to the enemy protein or enemy cell, forgive me, that leads to its destruction. Agglutination, which is the clumping of the enemy cells. So it grabs the enemy cells and clumps them all together by the antibodies. So it's pretty much it's effective. It's really good against bacteria. It immobilizes alien cells and prevents them from spreading. So since it clumps the cells together, it's holding them tight and saying, yeah, you're not going anywhere, pretty much. Precipitation, it's a similar process to the antigen molecules. Um, which it pretty much does the same thing, kind of clumps. It kind of helps with agglutination in a way. So that's pretty much the attack phase of it. Let me fix that. I'll fix that later. So the fourth and final step is the humoral immunity, which is memory. Of the humoral immunity is memory. So the humoral immune reaction. So when the initial reaction, the humoral immune thing is called primary response. So the primary response leaves with the person with the memory of the antigen. So when I mentioned before that in the clonal section, how it's split into two essentially, most of them are actually the plasma cells. This one, some of them turn into memory B cells, which memory B cells with cellular immunity help with the memorization of the antigens that affected the body to help prevent it in the future. So that is pretty much my take on cellular immunity and humoral immunity. I will be back for the fourth and final video of the first extra credit assignment very shortly. So see you soon.